first speaker in this series. Brigadier General retired Joseph S. Stringham, likes to go by Joe. I ran into him as a first lieutenant. He was the commander of the 75th Ranger Regiment. He was the 4th commander, the 4th RCO. And we called him Smoking Joe. I don't think Sandy likes that, but that's what the deal was. He was all Ranger, all business, and you road marched your asses off. That's how it was. What I did not know until I started a deep dialogue with him is how much Special Forces he really is. 2 tours in Vietnam, commanding 2 separate A camps. And then one of his tasks in the second tour was to stand up the Mike Force for 2 Corps tactical zone. And that's what we'll hear about. His bio is on the poster out there. I won't get deep into it other than he's a West Point graduate of 1961. He then got rolled right into the Army and the infantry, finds his way over to Vietnam. Second tour, stands up this Mike Force. He does a whole myriad of operational tasks and tactical tasks. We will also hear from him later today. He's going to brief us on El Salvador. Okay, winds up commanding 1st of the 75th, commands the 75th Ranger Regiment, and becomes the first Deputy Commanding General for U.S. Army Special Operations Command. He and his wife, Sandy, have done wonders for the community. He is an inductee into the Ranger Hall of Fame, and he's one of our distinguished members of the Special Forces Regiment. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Brigadier General retired Joe Stringham.
I got all this electronic stuff and I'll screw it up somehow, but I'll try not to. I want to start off by recognizing some people here. General Roberson, nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
And I wish you well in your assignment in the position. It's a fast ride, believe me. I would also like to recognize our Medal of Honor laureates. We appreciate your coming and we appreciate your service. You're an inspiration to us all. Thank you very much. And I'd like to recognize also a special guy here, Clyde St. Cyr, 2 Corps Mike Force. 56. To start off, I would like to thank very much the association for putting this on, your volunteers and all the work that has gone into it, and we greatly appreciate it. Also like to thank the 10th group, got active duty people, troops, and retired who are supporting this also. And last of all, the hotel staff that's done such a nice job of putting this on for us. The situation for me is very simple. When I was asked by Chris a year ago to do something on the Mike Force, I said I would do it, and then I got thinking about it. And if you will just let me read some of my notes, humor me on that, I would appreciate it. I accepted, and when I accepted it, I realized the myth and mythology that surrounded the Mike Force culture. As I said, myth and mythology, but also it's very well, extremely well covered by the USASOC History Department in an article on the first Mike Forces. And the magazine for that article is right there. You can read it, but you can't take it. It's my only one. And there aren't any left. That copy of that magazine went like hotcakes when it first came out. My intention here today is not to retell the Mike Force story, but to fill in the blanks about the origin and initial deployment of this fabled unit. The initial force was made up of Cantonese Chinese from southeast China, refugees from Mao Zedong's revolution in China, also refugees in North Viet and the Indo-Chinese struggle because they all went down into Indochina. The word Nung, as is explained to me by my Chinese colleagues, loosely translates into farmer landowner. And that's what they really were. They were wealthy Chinese farmers, just like the padrones in Mexico and so forth. And they lost everything. A lot of their wealth is buried in the ground in Canton, according to them. And they all expressed desire to me to go back. And I will say this, because we faced a very strong fifth column, and what a lot of our work was, they were anti-communist, and I never doubted one of them, ever. And the Mike Force concept was the brainchild of Lieutenant General and Major General, Lieutenant General Richard Stilwell, J3, Thomas McV. And Joe, you and I know him. And Major General Bill Depew. They directed the 3-Corps C3 detachment, SF detachment, to recruit and train a Chinese mercenary battalion, which would be under the command, and I underline command, of the Special Forces. The LLDB were not involved. I took my orders, and they frequently came on pink papers right out of Thomas Mike V to show you what, that's top secret stuff, to show you what I'm talking about. And that's why General Stilwell wanted this force. And there's a force in being for bailing out beleaguered camps and so forth. That came into being real fast. BDA, which came into immediate focus, and so forth. So that's the reason for it, and that's why General Stilwell came up with this idea. My commander, Lieutenant Colonel Miguel de la Pena, Mike, was the man who took the orders from Thomas McV and gave them right to me. And of course, that's where the name Mike Force comes from. It's from Mike de la Pena, not surprisingly. To start this off, the first Special Forces group got involved in this in December of '64, when they raised 2 Chinese Nung companies, 348 Company, 349 Company, and the Civilian Irregular Defense Group, CIDG. One of the companies would be left at the area where they were recruited in Honak Tau, a little camp. Can you put the Vietnam thing up here? I think I'll get it. There, we got it? Here's Saigon. Here's Benoit, and Honak Tau was right in here, right in between it. And the rest of the operation went up here. And just to fill you all in and refresh your memory, War Zone C, which was right up against Cambodia, and of course we shouldn't even talk about the fact that the support was coming in from Cambodia at that time. You didn't mention it. And regardless of what people say they did, nobody went into Cambodia if you wanted to continue in the service of the United States Army. And you have War Zone C, War Zone D, and then of course Saigon. Now, the push was coming in, obviously, from Cambodia into War Zone C, and this area in here, Iron Triangle and Ben Cat, was the area that the subversives were trying to close, the VC and the NVA, so that they could have this line right into here and then go after Saigon. I will talk later on the first operation, Song Bay V detachment is here, to Bujamop and Budap on the Cambodian border. And I tell you about on the Cambodian border, just as a word to say, on our 1 to 250,000 maps, which is all we had, the border was outlined as ill-defined. Keep that in mind. Because at Budap or Bujamop, you couldn't go out outside the camp and relieve yourself without going into Cambodia. And if you had air support, it was a pretty tight turn for those airplanes not to fly over Cambodia when they came out of their run. So there you have it as far as the Cambodian situation is concerned. So the first group took the 349 Nung Company and a split A and went to a place called Ben Cat. And Ben Cat's on the map, and I outlined that to you early on. Bencat was doomed from the start. The first group, Split A, in December of 64, got into a heavy fight and were badly beaten up in a place just north of Bencat called Dong So. The area was so bad, and it was on the anniversary of the gunfight at OK Corral, that one of the astute NCOs in the team nicknamed or dubbed that area the OK Corral area, which caught on with the press and would be called that for a long time. The situation at Bencat was bad. And after the first group, a deployed team, A301, came in from the fifth group and took over Bencat. And on December 28th, 64, the A detachment from Bencat got in a heavy fight up at Dong So again in the OK Corral area, where Sergeant Segrist and Master Sergeant Segrist and Sergeant Padula were killed, and Roy Jacobson escaped. Roy's son is now commander of the Special Forces Schools at Fort Bragg, Colonel Jacobson. Again in the OK Corral. The defeat of A301 again at Dong So deteriorated the team badly. The detachment commander was evacuated with ulcers. The commo chief had a nervous breakdown. The light weapons NCO broke down. And all these guys left with the two men that were killed at Dong So. So, we're coming up on Tet, 1964. I got a message from Colonel Della Pena. So I want you to pick up your bunk and junk, 348 Company, and go to Bencat. You're the man. So I took 348 Company and went to Bencat, and events at Bencat are a matter of a book by Ray Bowes. I'm not going to go into it. There's a wild mutiny that was on CBS. Morley Safer aired on CBS. And we went down. We went down on the afternoon of the 22nd of May. After we went down, I was a captain without a team. I had half an A detachment and 348 Company. And they closed us down back into Honok Tau, where we marshaled with what was left of the operation. 2 weeks after within 2 weeks, I was notified by Colonel Della Pena to report to Benoit, and I was given the first mission, Mike Force mission. The BDA for the first use of SAC in Vietnam. Guess where? The OK Corral. So when I went back to my detachment and said, we're going into the OK Corral on this BDA thing, the enthusiasm for the operation was noticeable. I said to one of the guys, I said, the place is going to look like the moon when SAC gets through with it. And he said, I sure hope so, because anything less than that, we're going to the moon. Well, as you know, the planes came in and they had a mid-air collision and the SAC boys missed the target. We got on the ground and there it all was. And the only thing is they had one load go through, and all they did was make a lot of dust and craters and make it harder to pass through the area. If you've ever been through an area with carpet bombing, you'll know this. And otherwise, everything was intact. And the BDA became a foot race. We got out of there fine, and a nice story, I ran into my assistant patrol leader on that operation, had a get together last fall in SOAR, and somebody came up to me and said, do you remember the strike at OK Corral? And I said, are you kidding me? And you look, thought maybe because I was old or something like that. And he said, well, your APL's sitting right over there. So I went over, there was Gus. And that was a wonderful, wonderful moment for me to run into him. Back after that incident, I was told by Colonel Della Pena to recruit 3 more companies and an Apache force. And as one eloquent soul in the Special Forces called the Apache force, it was a suicide element. The Apache force was to go in and set up LZs in hot areas for helicopter insertion. Think about that one. Because it was right after Dong Xuai where the helicopters went in and were ambushed. That was the Apache force. So we had the Mike force, the Apache force, and then I did something, I think it was divinely inspired, but it was done out of loyalty to my Cambodians that had made through with me at Ban Cat. There were 12 of those guys. They were all ex-legionnaires. And they all spoke French, some French. And I took them with me, unbeknownst to the management. And I never told the management that, but it was damn lucky for all of us that I did take them with me, because they came in, because working with a mercenary force, there are some shortcomings, which I'll get into in a minute. But I had my Cambodians with me to do this and take care of it. We trained these guys for about 4 weeks. And then we took them on an operation up to in the Swan Lock area, which is right up in here. This is contested, but it was not hot. It was a good place to break up and break in a unit like this. The Apache force, we had to qualify as airborne. That's another funny story. If you want me to talk about it later on, I can. But Roy Jacobson, Colonel Jacobson's son, was the head of the Apache force, and he took them and got them set up to do the Apache work himself. Well, I took the Mike force and the Cambodians, my Cambodians, and went to Swan Lock. Came back from Swan Lock. We had just gotten back. On Monday, the 22nd of July, I got a message from my colonel again, from Colonel Della Pena again. Report immediately for deployment to C3, which was going up the road. And he wanted to see me in person. He didn't, this was going to be done on the radio. So I got in my little vehicle and went up there. But before I left, I told Sergeant Wilson, Elliot Wilson, and Bill Parnell, who was a commo guy, Elliot Wilson was a weapons guy, to get together one company and get them ready to go. And I said, oh, by the way, include the Cambodians in that when you do that. And I went up to C3 and was told the following. Bujamop and Budop were split A's. Budop was A312. Bujamop was A312 minus, I guess you'd call it, which was under the XO up there, and Boyce Walker, the team sergeant. Bujamop was under siege as these camps were running into more and more in those days and times. And it was imminent they were going to be overrun, perhaps that night. So I went back with that instruction to reinforce Bujamop. Got back to Honak Tau. We loaded 120 Nungs and my Cambodians on trucks and took them to Tan Son Nhut. Now listen to this. At Tan Son Nhut, we discovered, everybody was air mobile in those days, that the helicopters didn't have the legs to get out there. So guess what we were going to go in? 123s. We put into 2 123s all that force. Now what that required us to do, and I got with the crew chiefs down there in the runway, we took out the inside completely of both those 123s. Chairs, stuff, everything. There was one seat left up in the boom, which I sat in going in. And we crammed the Nungs in there, back to front, sitting on the floor with all their gear stuffed, pushed right into the front forward edge of the plane. We took off. It was starting to get dark and all of that, and we headed toward Bujamop. It was getting dark. In fact, it got dark, and it was, of course, the rainy season. I do not know, ladies and gentlemen, how in the hell the pilots navigated that plane to Bujamop, because there were no lights, there was no nothing. Bujamop was dark. They were getting ready to get hit. They were notified that we were coming in, and as we came in, I could see out the nose of the 123 8 kerosene smudge pots along the side of the runway. That's it for lighting. And I only knew we were going in when the pilot stood that thing on its nose, like they do with the 123, flatten it out, and drop the landing gear and put it down. Boom, like that, hard. Because that was a daylight strip for resupply operations only. This is the first time it ever had been used at night for that type of a thing. He rolled right up to the gate, turned it around, and took off immediately as fast as he could, and the second one came in. We unloaded outside of Bujamop, and Sergeant Boyce Walker, who was an exceptional soul, came up and guided us into the camp. We went into Bujamop, and there wasn't time for a briefing. You had to do this thing out of the back of your pocket. We took the Nungs, and we put them into the bunker line. We took over the bunker line and pulled the CIDG troops that were left in. They were scared, and they wanted out of there any way they possibly could get, and we put them right in the middle of the camp where they were okay. And then we manned that thing. We were taking fire. That's nothing unusual, and especially for the guys from Bend Cat, that happened every night. But the fact of the matter is, when you are taking fire, you have to be careful about what you do as far as moving around is concerned in situations like that, especially when you don't know the area at all. This was it. And we held on to it through the night into about 11 o'clock and about 2300. At 2300, it got quiet. There was nothing. Rainy season, dark and quiet. Then all of a sudden, it hit. The sky lit up, and it was a huge attack going in, not onto us, but onto Budap. Remember, these camps are right up against the border. The sky lit up. We could see Budap being attacked from my position at Bujamop down the ridge. It's about 10 to 15 clicks, but it was downhill, so we could see it. And that's how much illumination there was. The Air Force came on station immediately, or just about immediately. We had a FAC, then we had Puff, the C-47 gunship, Puff the Magic Dragon, and then we had, let's see, FAC, Puff, and then we had 4 F-100s come in. Now, as I told you, we're right there at the Cambodian border. Those guys banked and came out of those bomb runs on that camp, on the NVA coming in there. I don't know how they couldn't miss Cambodia, but they did. It went on, the attack went on anyway, till about 2 o'clock in the morning when it started to rain and fog. The shooting didn't stop, the flat trajectory shooting didn't stop at Budap, but of course the air power had to leave. Then everything suddenly started to subside at Budap, and we started to get hit at Bujamop. Then I got a communication from the B detachment, and actually my commander, Colonel Delapina at Song Bay, to evacuate Bujamop as soon as it got light enough to bring a 123 in and start pulling the thing out. It made no mention about what to do with all the equipment, ammunition, gasoline, vehicles, camp records, sensitive equipment, you name it. It was all still there. But it said evacuate Bujamop in this order. Take out the 8 attachment, the 8 attachment minus, because they were going to try to reinsert them at Budop. Take out the CIDG that was left. Infiltrate them down to Song Bay, where they would be taken into Budop. Then take the Mike Force out. And that left the three kings on the ground. Myself, Sergeant Wilson, and Bill Parnell. We were there. But as we worked up to that final extraction point, we wired Bujamop for Song. That was the largest ring main system you have ever seen in your life. It went all the way around the camp and in between all the gasoline, ammunition bunker, everything. That's a lot of work. Wire that stuff and get it set to explode, to detonate. Then, here's something else we did that I thought was pretty cool. We dual primed that, which you say, well, you always dual prime things. So this was a quadruple dual prime. We took the real firing train and lit it off at the far end of the camp and hit it in the bunker. We cut the fuses to 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Put them in the bunker, because I gave those doggone guys credit for something. I knew they knew we'd do something like that, but they were going to have they wouldn't fire. And that was the train. That was the primary firing system. Then we walked casually to the gate. And there, in full view of all the communists in the world, we did the fire in a hole routine and fired the dummy charge at the gate right out in the open so they could see it and come in and grab it. Then we called the helicopter. And it came in and landed right near us, and we went and got on it. And in the helicopter was a new seat attachment XO. Nice guy, but he hadn't seen a shot fired in anger since Korea. And Colonel Delapina told him to go out there and make sure I did everything okay, which was a good idea. And also at the same time, a C-123 started to land. I don't know why, I don't know what possessed them who sent that 123, because we didn't need it and we didn't ask for it. But here, ladies and gentlemen, to refresh your memories, we couldn't talk to that bird, and he was landing. I yelled at I knew who could, and I grabbed the pilot in the Huey, because he had the air-ground push on his helicopter. And I yelled at him, and I said, this place is going to be a hole in the ground in 3.5 minutes. He understood. And he started, and we hovered down the strip to go pick up the major, pulled him over the skid, and even as we were gaining altitude and velocity, which we were doing both very fast, we got him in and we left. We landed at Song Bay, and I looked back at Bujamop. It was nothing, 10 kilometers away, but a huge black cloud. The charges went off. And we all hoped that those damn subversives came running into camp when we left, because they were going to be toasted fritters if they went into that place. We'll never know about that. We flew into Song Bay. In Song Bay, I got another surprise. I had my Nung company there in Cambodia. The Major came up, Major B Detachment Commander came out to me and said, Colonel Delapina wants you to marshal up the Nungs and take them into Budop. Well, nothing would surprise me by that time in those days and times, but I was kind of trying to catch my breath. But the powers that be did something very smart. They had set up a fort finally so they could get helicopters out there. And they were going to lift us in on the east side of Budap. There was a runway that went right down there. They were going to lift us in a rubber plantation east of the camp. That makes a lot of sense because the camp was under attack still. Not as heavy as it was the night before, but the NVA all over the place. They didn't know they were NVA until they got in there, but they were big. By going through that rubber plantation, we would be able to clear all of those guys from the east side of the camp because there was plenty on the west side. That was Cambodia. We got off and moved into the rubber, and I got a hold of my head Nungs, Sam, and I said, I want you to move through here. I don't want you to stop for any reason at all. Anybody gets in the way, you knock them down. Just keep going. We have got to get there before it gets dark because I don't want to be running into friendly fire and enemy fire at the same time after dark. You can all imagine what that kind of thing boils down to. The Nungs took off. Boy, they did a nice job. And they hit. They hit them. And they got them out of the way. It went through that like a hot knife through butter. And we arrived on the east side of Budap on the runway that went down the east side of the strip. Just before dark. I looked across the strip, ladies and gentlemen, and I was horrified to see that the gate was wide open. It'd been open since that previous night at 2 o'clock. I'll tell you how it got open. We poured into Budap and tried to seize control of that bunker line, which was a mess, because Budap was heavily infiltrated. There was a pretty big fifth column in Budap, and you didn't know the players from the umpires. The Nungs did. They just took it over. Moved everybody to the center. I got with what was left of the 8 attachment there, and Boyce Walker. We started pull body and soul together. Then, now listen to this. Kik T, my head Cambodian, just before dark, came up to me and he said, Dai Wee, the laundry woman for the detachment team in Budap is an NVA agent. She opened the gate at 1 o'clock for the attacking forces into this camp. There was a sizable fifth column of communists among the forces in CIDG forces, which was nothing new. We had the same thing at Ben Cat, but we were under attack. But we consolidated that perimeter and established some kind of control over that mess. Thanks to Kik T, I was alerted to this fact, and oh, by the way, the laundry woman disappeared. I do not know what happened to her. I sincerely don't know what happened to her, but she was gone, and I went out looking for her. It got dark, and the NVA came back from the west and attacked again. To this day, I cannot understand why they would do that, because we were strong in there then, and they would know that. The attack didn't last long, and they broke it off and went back, as it turned, into Cambodia. That, the next day, we started to pull body and soul together in camp. We had no water because the attacking forces had killed a bunch of civilians and put their bodies in the well. That's communism in first hand, ladies and gentlemen. Put it in your book. So we were looking for water, and we had that problem, and then my head Nung came up to me. He had 2 claymores in his hand, 2 claymore mines in his hand. The Dai Wee, one of the claymores had the wires cut on it, and one of the claymores had been turned around facing into the camp. This would become commonplace, and we got used to it later on, but this was the first time this came up, and the Nungs caught it. So we put out the policy to the camp. You will not, under any circumstances, venture onto the bunker line at all, unless you're Chinese or supporting Cambodian platoon. And that stuck. They stayed off. We had no more trouble with claymores, and we put them out and we used them. The next thing we had to do, really fast, and you military guys will understand this, we had to clear that area around the camp. At least we had to get them out of mortar range, because you can't work if you're getting shot at. And we had a lot of work to do. So what we did was push out with the Mike Force, leaving just a skeleton crew in the camp, and look for the NVA. Now, I'll tell you something which is very unusual. The NVA left an assault line of their dead troops on the runway, some of them tied to the carrying poles. I had never seen anything like this before. They never left their dead. They also left a lot of their AK-47s, RPDs, and rocket launchers. This was very unusual, but it had to be cleaned up. So we were looking for them, and we pushed north, and here's what we found. There was a well-prepared road which would support heavy truck traffic out of Cambodia, which went into Cambodia and terminated at the Budap airstrip. You don't have to be a terribly bright person to figure out where the support is coming in. This road went under the canopy and could not be detected from the air. That's how well it was put together. And of course we reported that, and we knew that hopefully that it would be taken into consideration by the J2 people. We worked then to clean the place up. A lot of dead bodies had to be policed up. The weapons lying all over the place had to be picked up. And we had to reestablish communications in the camp. In a camp that was very badly beat up, and you can see the picture of it, which was taken by the BBC, incidentally, in the Arba Veritas article. We worked about the next 10 days patrolling out from Budap and cleaning the camp up as best we possibly could. We got support in to do the engineer support in to take care of a lot of the cadavers that we had. That's a big job. And if, I don't want to be graphic about this thing, but it stinks. Bad. And it had to be cleaned up, and had to be, and also it's a terrible health problem. We finished that up and helped external support from engineers. And then in about 10 days, I got another message to marshal the Mike Force that I had there, link them up at Honak Tau, and get ready for another insertion into Dong Xuai, which was going down again. Also, we had 2 SAC strikes to go that we had to go in between those times. So you can see we kept pretty busy for a bunch of country boys. Here's some lessons I learned about the operation and about the use of mercenary forces. A mercenary force is an alien force in a foreign area. And they go in there, they have to keep that in mind. That is an advantage. It is also a disadvantage, because what don't they have? They don't have local intelligence capability. They will not know what's going on, because the people out there would not talk to the Chinese. They wouldn't talk to me. So that's one thing I learned. The second thing I learned, and actually there's a lot of history is replete with this, the British at Trenton, New Jersey in 1777 didn't know Washington was coming because nobody talked to them, because the Hessians were German. That's a foot stomper. Okay, the conclusion. Much notoriety accompanied the 3-Corps Mike Force operation in 3 Corps. Other corps areas took note of this and started their own operations with this, the myth and mythology of the Mike Forces grew. John Wayne even made a movie out of it. My wife has a real funny story about that. If you want to talk to her, stick your hand up. But the Mike Force concept took hold all over Vietnam. It was distinguished. People like Clyde St. Cyr and at all four corps. And their credit to what happened. And that with the Max Sog people, you know the rest of the story. Thank you very much. I'll open the floor to you for anything, your comments or questions, or if you want to throw stones at me, let me know first and I'll duck.
Hey, Travis, could you grab that mic over there? If we have any questions, we'd like to have you on the mic so we can get it picked up for history. All right? Anybody got a question for General Stringham? You're shaking in your boots out there. You're scared, okay? Okay, I got one down here. Travis, where's that mic? Just pass it right on down. Is it turned on? Okay, you're the man. You got it.
All right, hey, bravo, sir. And, you know, part of me is jealous because I wish you could have been there, and part of me is smart enough to know that I couldn't stand in your boots, so thank you, sir, for what you did. And
Choke up on that microphone.
yeah, okay, yeah, thank you, sir, for what you did, because, yeah. But, you know, my concern, and I hate to say this with General Roberson here, is we aren't prepared to take that amount of risk today to fight and win. And that's what I'm worried about with our regiment. And, you know, what do you think going forward about our requirements to have the ring of the ring of safety around our guys? And, you know, can we fight and win, or when are we going to be able to take risk again?
I understand I understand your question. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I, of course, can't answer it in a blanket sort of sense, but there are other things that we as Special Forces can do, not the least of which is low visibility operations, low contact with the enemy operations, but very effective. And I'm going to talk to that a little bit more this afternoon about El Salvador, because that's exactly what we did there. And the academic community is using El Salvador right now. It's a stretch of the imagination because El Salvador was much smaller than what is going on in the Middle East, but as an example of how you should run Cohen without getting involved in a huge, massive buildup of military operation and expense. And that's a big deal. But I'll talk to that this afternoon if you want to sit in on that. I cover that with the Salvador operation. Is that it? Did I cover your operation?
Oh, yes, sir.
Sir, you touched on the requirement for training the force, but operational requirements being high, demands were high, and the time constraints were pretty tight. How did you prioritize training of the force?
That's a good question. And I remember what I said, we played it as we went. And there was no plan for that. We knew that we had to improve interoperability. That's an absolute essential. The Nungs had to talk to the Americans, hierarchy, the planes, and so forth. They had to use our weapons. And besides the C3 procedures, which we had to teach them, they had to use our commo. And so we went along, and as the pitfalls happened, which it did, the Swanlock operation, I didn't go into that in great detail, but that was a very important time. That's where we picked up on a lot of that stuff and built it as we went along, to answer your question. We did not have a master plan.
Other question? Let's pass that mic back. Thanks, Travis. We'll throw it over to you. While we're doing that, if I can ask, sir, how many folks in here served in the Mike Force?
Yeah.
Raise your hand. Wow.
Hey, God bless you all. That's all I have to say.
You got a crowd today. Somebody's got the mic.
Yes, I had a quick question. I came to Vietnam a little later than you did, back in '69, and I was running recon, and we had what we called a hatchet force. And
Yes.
it sounds like it's
Yes.
the concept is
The
very,
Apache
very
force
similar.
was a forerunner to the Hatchet force, yes.
Thank you.
It was also, your colleagues called a suicide operation, but I don't want to go on.
Of course.
And it was airborne, which is another funny story, which it was. Clyde? Yes, sir.
Here, Clyde, you got it.
I trained the entire 2-Corps Mike Force to be airborne, and we made the jumps out of play coup, and it was something interesting. We had to put rocks in their kit bags to make them, I'm serious, to make them heavy enough to make the chute open.
Ladies and gentlemen, Clyde Sincere, another distinguished member of your regiment.
I've jump mastered the first Mike Force jump. We got them all suited up, shooted up and everything was going fine. There was a lot of ding hows going on and everything, a lot of testosterone coming to the surface. We loaded them on the plane. We got them all loaded in there, and I was outside making sure everything was okay. I got in the plane, and here's what I saw. They were all sitting on the floor with Buddha punk out, praying. I thought, oh my goodness. We went over the drop zone. We got everybody hooked up, and I jumped. And I looked back, and nothing happened. Then suddenly there was a wad of humanity coming out the door. Sergeant Rothman, a very large weapons NCO, was pushing the stick, and he pushed it.
Other question. Come on, we got a lot of people in here. We got to have some questions. Yeah. Okay, is that it? Going once? Whoa, we got a question here. We're going to throw a microphone over to him, please. Where's that mic? Travis, we can pass that down. Microphone's coming down to you.
Yours was the first Mike Force that came into existence, and a lot of trial and error, I'm sure. Yes, what do you contribute to the success of the Mike Forces that came after that? What happened that went on and expanded as opposed to being with all the misgivings and miscalculations of the first group there in combat? What led to it expanding and continuing on?
That's a very good question. As I said before, there was nothing written on this. We played it, we made it up as we went along because we didn't know either. But we did get, but I answer your question specifically. Here's what we picked up from the original Mike Force operation. First of all, what type of mission were they going to get? And that's important. If you don't know the mission, you know. But if you could anticipate the mission, was it going to be BDA for SAC? Was it going to be camp reinforcement? Or even clearing an area, road clearing of an area, or setting up a massive LZ for the CAV or anybody else? That came out of the first Mike Force in the Apache unit. The missions, I think, would be my answer to your question as a primary advantage picked up from that. Secondly, this mercenary force thing, working with a mercenary force, which we had never done. Now, a lot of us in special forces said that we were running the show and everything. Yeah, so be it. But we were not. But this, we were running the show. And that is advantage and a disadvantage. And don't forget the intel aspect of it, which people in the other corps areas picked up because they recruited their mercenary or their Mike Forces from their own people. That was probably a very good idea. I hope I gave you some of an answer to you. That's a very difficult question and a very important one.
Hey, sir, I've got a couple of pictures here I'd like you to comment on that you provided me.
Okay. That is a guy you know, probably.
Use your pointer.
I'm going to, yes, ma'am. She also tells me to stick to the script when I talk. Okay. There we go. That's me. That's the new 5th Group commander there. Forgot. That is Major Buck, the B detachment commander from Pleiku. And he was brand new also. And that is General Lamson, the colonel's counterpart at Natron. They came out to Giavuk because, of course, we were a mountain yard camp. It was a very successful mountain yard camp, too. This is the original 348 Nung Company. Commander, some of his assistants, and this is the camp commander, Daiwi Ho, I think I remember his name, at Honak Tau, and that's me. I'll think of the colonel's name in a minute.
There's another set, sir.
Oh, okay.
Got a few more.
Was it Rowe?
Okay.
Was it
I'm sorry?
Rowe?
Rowe?
Colonel Rowe?
No, it wasn't Colonel Rowe. It was before Colonel Rowe. He came in, Joe, in May of our. He came in May of our time, our TDY time there. Okay, that's Colonel Buck again. That's me again, and that's at Giavuk. And there's an iconic photo which you'll see in a lot of Special Forces documents of Lieutenant Stringham and a little mountain yard guy smoking a Pall Mall. He loved them. I don't smoke them, but I carry Pall Malls with me so that I could first of all, keep them off the runway when we had planes coming in, and second of all, because he liked them. Contributing to the delinquency of minors, I bow to that one. I think he was 10 years old. Okay. That's at Honak Tau as we were. I'm sorry. There we go. That's me at Honak Tau as we were developing the Mike force in between, just before we went into Bujau Mob. That's Ben Cat. And Ben Cat's a Greek tragedy. And it's a very big thing in my military career, and it shaped my military personality for the years to come. And it's in this Ben Cat story right here on the table up there. You're welcome to read it. Along with a mutiny we had at Ben Cat, where the camp commander was assassinated by the 348 Company. He had it coming, but I wish they hadn't have done it because of a very lively afternoon, because we're shooting at each other in a 50 square meter enclosure. And that's me as an executive officer at Giavuk. Circa, okay, yeah. Oh, yes, sir. Welcome to the forum.
Sorry, we'll throw you that mic right there.
I'll try to get it. Go.
Okay. Are we in contact? I was with I was in 3 Corps Mike Force, and a lot of people don't know that in 1966, I had a company, and I was out on operation. They called me back, and when I returned back to the SF camp, they told me that I was attached. My company was attached to the 1st Infantry Division. So I reported to General Hollingsworth from the 1st Infantry, and he told me a few little things, and he says, you are attached, your company, your Mike Force company is attached to the 1st Infantry Division. So I said, yes, sir, 3 bags full. So even though he was in the infantry division, he asked me, what do you need to make a recon? I said, I need a helicopter to make a recon to see where I could land my company. I had 135 Chinese Nungs. The bad part about it was the armory that we had was BARs, 1919 A6 machine guns, 60 millimeter mortar, and of course we weren't up to snuff, and I was the only one that had a Car 15. So once I made my recon, I found myself, I found a landing zone for 10 helicopters. So I came back, gave the general a briefing, and that's when he asked me, well, you're going to be making an air assault, how many helicopters do you need? I said, I will need 10 helicopters. So which he did, he gave me 10 helicopters. We found, I made my air assault.
Put the mic up a little closer.
But
Face it this way.
can you hear me now? Yeah. Oh. So when I made the, when we took off for the air assault, I always got on the second helicopter, and I got a call from the lead helicopter pilot. Told me, China boy, he said, we can't make the drop now because the Air Force has to come in first. So I said, okay, just circle the wagons and we'll just wait. So once the Air Force started coming in and dropping napalm and bombs and everything, I knew it was going to be a bad one. Anyway, once the Air Force took off, we made the air assault, and what we came across was the VC and North Vietnamese division. So once we made contact with them, it was one of those things where General Hollingsworth was flying up in the helicopter, and he says, you guys are going to get wiped out. It's the best thing to do is for me to call the 1st Infantry Division. The 1st Infantry Division came in, and we pulled back. Now, there is a book written by General S.L.A. Marshall, and the name of the book is Ambush by S.L.A. Marshall about this battle. And the battle was called Operation Attleboro. So the credit should go to the Mike Force. Of course, we weren't supposed to be there. And the only thing you'll see in that book by General S.L.A. Marshall is probably a few pictures of me in that book. But I just want you all to know that because of the Mike Force, Operation Attleboro was started.
Well, Joe.
Ladies and gentlemen, that kind of wraps it on time. I really appreciate, General, your discussion. This was enlightening. It actually helped clarify history quite a bit. And certainly for me, it was a pleasure building up to this moment. Thank you very much. You bet. Okay, we got to tidy up a little bit, as if you don't already have enough stuff on your wall, okay? You get the Jiffy convention coin on a nice flash backdrop, more for sale next door. So that's it there for you, and another low-cost certificate, okay? Yep, that's it. Yes, sir. Anything else you want to say? Okay. You bet.